Hey, it's Stephanie at Allen Acres, and today I wanted to show you my garden. Hi, my name is Stephanie. I am a mom of 7 and I homeschool. We live on a small 5-acre homestead in a tiny Texas town where we pick farm fresh eggs, milk our goats, and make as much food from scratch as we can. We love spending lots of time outside, learning new ways to live a healthy life, and enjoying all the good things God has given us. Here I'll share about parenting, homeschooling, homesteading, family favorite recipes, and testimonies of God's faithfulness. If you enjoy a tight-knit family, real life moments, and the pursuit of a joy-filled life, you're in the right place. I hope you'll join me on my journey to a happy, healthy home life. Okay, so why did I start a garden? Well, the reasons probably are mostly obvious. We have 7 kids, and anything we can do to help lighten the load on that grocery bill every month is always a plus. Also, it's educational. Anything that is educational, it doesn't feel like school, is always a plus for me. It's a great opportunity for my kids to learn. I also love the idea of planting a seed, watching it grow, and then getting to nourish my family with homegrown food. That is so exciting. Also, things are weird with the grocery stores these days. And so my husband and I have just really felt led to do the things that we know we can do to become a little bit more independent. Now, I would like to say that this video is probably not for those of you who are experienced gardeners. If you've been gardening for years, if you have lots of experience and a lot of knowledge, it's very likely that this video will not help you at all, even if you've gardened ever before, because I haven't. This is truly beginner gardening. I just wanted to share my experience so far. Now, obviously, one 12-foot raised bed is not going to feed my whole family for a year. But sometimes I think we think that we have to have everything figured out to get started, that we have to know everything before we can even make the first move. And the truth is that that's really not true. We just have to get started sometimes. And so while this one bed is not going to feed my whole family, it's going to feed us some. And I'm really excited about that. Now, I was given a couple of books a few years ago for Christmas on organic gardening, raised bed gardening, and specifically gardening here in Texas. So I read those, or at least parts of them. I also have a brother and a very knowledgeable sister-in-law who are farmers and have a plethora of knowledge about gardening, and they have passed on some of that knowledge to me. That's really about it. So to get started, we weeded our bed. It had about 4-foot weeds covering it, so it was quite a task, but we all worked together and we pulled all the weeds and we tilled the soil. The reason it had so many weeds is because I attempted this garden a few years ago, but I planted my seed and shortly after found out I was expecting. And as anyone knows that has been pregnant before, first trimester exhaustion is real, and my garden needs and desires were last on the list. The only thing that survived that garden was some okra. Apparently, it doesn't need much tending. It's like a wild child, which I understand because I have at least one of those in my house. After we tilled the soil, we put some earthworm casings in it as our organic fertilizer. Our goal in our gardening is to do it as close to the way God intended it, so the least amount of intervention as possible and no chemicals. To plan out what I wanted to plant, I just used some copier paper and some colored pencils. I used simple math to figure out the square footage of my raised bed. Then on each package, it tells you how far apart each seed needs to be planted. For example, 12 inches. I used that to do quick calculations until all of my square footage had been used up. I color coded it to make it a little bit easier to see. I took my map outside along with a cloth measuring tape I have that I use for sewing and crocheting, and I planted my seeds. I took my babies outside in the wagon, and they kept me company while I planted. I used non-GMO or organic seeds, most of which I got at my local farm and ranch store. A few of them I got online at Annie's Heirloom Seeds. I wanted to be really mindful of what I planted. I didn't want to get too excited and plant a bunch of things that we've never heard of or never eaten. So I decided to stick with things that I would normally buy in the grocery store. I planted squash, zucchini, spinach, cabbage, green beans, lettuce, carrots, beets, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, watermelon, cantaloupe. I also planted some flowers like cosmos and nasturtiums. These are good for multiple reasons. They attract pollinators, but they also help repel pests that you would not want in your garden. I also planted different herbs to accomplish the same thing. One thing I did learn in the books that I was reading is that when you're trying to plant a garden and do it as organically as possible, you want to do something called companion planting. This is the idea that you don't plant two things that draw the same nutrients from the soil. So, for example, if one plant draws out a lot of nitrogen, you would not want to plant another plant next to it that also draws out a lot of nitrogen. You'll notice I'm referencing my little map often and doing my best to measure out where each seed needs to go. I am sure there is a more efficient way to do this and possibly even some really great tools you can buy to make this easier. But like I said, I am a beginner gardener trying to keep my investment low just to try this out and to see how I'm going to do before I invest too much into it, besides my time, of course. Now, I mentioned that I don't know that much about gardening, and I have a confession. We planted our seeds back at the end of March, and when I began to see things sprout in the garden, I got so excited. I didn't want to touch anything. I didn't know what was a weed and what was a sprout, so I left it all there. But I paid the consequences because now my garden is full of weeds. I have spent some time trying to get some of the weeds out, but the problem that I have now is a large problem and it's going to take a lot of time to get all of the weeds out. Thankfully, my brother was here the other day and he was very kind and helped me out. After getting some of the weeds out, some things already seem to be doing better, and thankfully, I still have a lot of stuff growing. I think gardening is a lot like our relationship with God. If a thought comes or a weed and we don't pull it right away, it can turn into an unhealthy thought life. We can get stuck in cycles of self-sabotage, depression, and anxiety. The scripture says that we are to be alert and of sober mind because we have an enemy, the devil, who is looking for someone to devour. Then somewhere else in the scriptures, it tells us that when a thought comes, we are to take it captive and make it obedient to Christ. But how do we know how to make it obedient to Christ if we don't know who he is? The best way to know who he is to know his character and to know his word. So, much like my garden, we have to be mindful to weed the thoughts in our mind and to recognize where our thoughts come from and to make sure we are only giving life to the thoughts that come from the Lord. At this moment, I need to pick some actual weeds. Even though I mentioned that I don't know very much, I did pray over my garden and ask God to please multiply and bless the work of my hands and make it a bountiful harvest. So I fully expect to be able to share my bountiful harvest with you in the very near future. We were so excited to get to harvest our first vegetables out of our garden. A whole squash is growed.
Oh my gosh. Look, there's an actual squash that actually grew. Look at that.
Oh my word.
Where?
So
Where is
exciting.
it?
There's multiple.
Is this it? Oh
Yeah, I think-
word. Oh, ow.
You can see the pure joy and satisfaction on my kids' faces, and you can hear it in their voices. Just that excitement about what has happened. It's green, so it's going to be the same color. Look over on the other side. Be really gentle.
Mom, there's another one that's
Look right here.
already.
What is that?
Mom, a green bean. Where? Is it ready?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's ready. We have another green bean growing.
We have what?
Another being.
You know, they know that we planted a seed, they help plant the seeds, they help water it, they help tend it and look at it, they help check on it, they've helped pull weeds, and now getting to see from their hard work what has been produced. And it's so exciting. I think that satisfaction just is proof that we were never intended to be inside all the time or to sit all the time. You know, we are a part of creation. And so being in creation and getting our hands dirty and working hard really does bring a satisfaction and a joy that you really just can't get from anything else.
So we'll give it 2 more days and it's gonna be done.
And I'm hopeful that in the future, we will have a basket full of harvest to show you. Hopefully, since things are going pretty well, my next garden, maybe I'll expand a little bit. Maybe I will invest a little bit more. I'm hoping to do a fall garden. Maybe my sweet husband will build me a second raised bed. Maybe I'll even invest in a soaker hose and a timer. I guess we'll just have to see. The cool thing about living in Texas is our growing season is long because we don't have a lot of cold days. So I'm really excited to see what else we can grow in our garden this year. So, are you an expert gardener? Have you been gardening for years? Are you just getting started? Or are you considering a garden but haven't actually taken that first step? Let me know in the comments below. I can take all the tips, tricks, and gardening hacks that you have. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. I get out a new video every Thursday on all things parenting, homesteading, homeschooling, and everything related to a happy, healthy home.